Welcome to r/slash entitled parents, where a mother demands that adult women show her son their vajongos. Okay, among my many vices, gaming, etc., one that I have had for many years is my addiction to nicotine. Now, I'm not a smoker. Honestly, I hate the smell of all forms of smoke. I use smokeless tobacco, better known as snuff, chew, or dip, depending on where you are in the nation. When you use this stuff, you spit, sometimes quite a lot. Because of that, I've had this habit of keeping old soda bottles handy. That way, I can spit in the bottle and seal it. No worry about accidentally spilling it and making a mess. This has also the effect of sometimes making it easy to hide what I am doing. I never expected that it'd cause trouble though. Trouble and humor. So a couple years back, I was taking a cross-country trip by bus. About halfway to my destination at a layover in Denver, I had the following encounter. I take a seat outside the bus station at a nearby store. As I sit down, I put my half-full spit bottle beside me and start checking my phone. Entitled kid pointing at bottle, "Gives me that." What? Huh? Oh, no, you don't want that. "I want it. Give it to me." Yes, the kid actually said gib. No, now shove off, kid. About this time, the kid ran over to his mother and said something. The lady came over my way and seemed nice, if very tired. Long bus rides will do that. "My boy says you won't give him the rest of your soda." It's not so. "I know full well what it is. Why don't you just, give it to him?" "But just give it to him." At this point, I just shrugged, gesturing at the bottle. The liquid in it was dark as cola, though it sure as heck wouldn't be as tasty. Oh, I know where this is going, and it's grossing me out. Mom smiled and thanked me, taking the bottle and walking back over to her hex spawn. I decided to hang around and watch everything. The kid turns to me, flips me the bird, and then makes a show of opening the bottle and taking a big gulp out of it. Oh man. You could see his brain suddenly short circuit. Gag reflex kicked in, along with the sudden need to swallow. I could tell that his mind was fighting with itself. Eyes the size of saucers. The gag reflex won and he blew the liquid out all over the front of his shirt, then pants. Then he started to dry heave. Turned several interesting shades of color too. All the while, the mom was watching him, patting his back. Eventually, she carried him off in the direction of the restroom to be cleaned up. The kid looked like he'd never trust a Coke ever again. I ended up speaking to the lady later while we were all on the bus. Apparently, the grandmom had seriously spoiled the kid, giving him anything and everything he wanted. Mom, for her part, was trying to teach him that the world didn't work that way. I think her little stunt with my spit bottle made a point. Just reading this story almost made me want to gag. I can't imagine swallowing someone else's spit. So I was at the mall shopping when Mother Nature called and I had to go to the ladies' room. There was a line for the women's room. In front of me there was a woman, entitled mom, with her son, entitled kid, that looked about 8 or 9 years old. He was, in my opinion, getting a little old to be accompanied by mommy in the girls' room, but I just decided to mind my business because I'm not a mom and I don't have to think about these kinds of things. It's finally my turn and I go into the restroom and choose my stall. It's a really big restroom with at least 20 stalls and it's full. I start doing my thing and I hear women in the stalls next to me shouting, "Excuse me, go away," and "Stop, you're too old for that," along with manic giggling from entitled kid. I'm caught with my skirt up and too late to change positions when I realize this tiny pervert's hands are on the floor in the stall next to me, getting ready to move on to mine. All you women know that it's hard to back out of this position once you're committed to it, or else the tampon goes to waste. I immediately warn him not to check my stall or I'll kick him in the face. "Excuse me?" Entitled kid decides to check anyways. I'm in a defensive position. I kick him in the face as soon as he takes a peek. Lucky for him, I was wearing flats. Entitled kid screams and starts bawling his eyes out, shouting for mommy. Entitled mom storms over to my stall, pounds on the door as hard as she can. "What did you do to my baby?" Can I add she didn't wash her hands yet? I ignore her, feeling no guilt, and finish my business. I open the door and she shouts at me, "Why did you kick my baby in the face?" Why was he close enough to my stall for me to kick him in the face? "He's a child. It's normal for them to be curious." Well, I warned him, and I frankly feel very uncomfortable changing my tampon in front of an underage boy. I'm frankly embarrassed, but felt she needed to know the compromising position I was in. The women in the bathroom hear and begin giggling and snorting at the absurdity of the situation. Entitled Mom blushes and looks disgusted at my frank remark. A woman near me agreed that he was too old to be checking under women's bathroom stalls and that Entitled Mom should be watching her son more closely if she has to bring him into the women's restroom with her. "You assaulted a small child. I'm calling security on you." I'll tell them exactly what happened and how he violated all the women in the stalls next to me. Entitled Mom leaves, but I guess she felt outnumbered because she didn't call security. Instead, she stormed out of the mall, dragging Entitled Kid by the wrist while muttering under her breath. I feel like this poor kid is going to grow up developing some weird fetish where he literally can't get it up unless he's watching some stranger pee while he's getting kicked in the face. So first, a little background. This happened about 3 to 4 years after I moved out of my parents' house and have been living independently. Then one day I get this string of texts from my mom. "Hey, how have you been doing? What are you up to 2 weeks from now?" I've been doing alright. I've started lifting weights and exercising more. I don't think I'm doing anything too exciting next week. Why you ask? "Perfect. Me and my boyfriend are going on a trip and need you to house sit and watch the dogs for us." "Sorry, but I can't just leave for a week." "Please, the dogs miss you and I'd really hate to put them in the kennel." "Sorry, but I have a job. I can't just go missing for a week." "Why can't you drive to work from my house?" "Because it's a 2.5-hour commute each way." "You have vacation days, right? Just use them." "No." "Please, I'd feel really bad about putting the dog in the kennel. You know how much she hates it." "You obviously don't feel that bad about doing it." Then I hear nothing from her until the day before they have their trip. "Hey, we're leaving for our trip today and I was wondering when you were going to be here. I want to show you some things before we leave." What part of our last conversation gave you any idea that I agreed to this? "That's very rude of you and no way to speak to your mother. Now, can we expect you here by 5? And at that point, I just put my phone on silent and stopped talking to her. I don't think I've ever seen an entitled parent story where the entitled parent was the actual parent of OP. But come on, what kind of person is like, "I want you to spend your vacation days so you can look after my pets while I take a real vacation"? So my uncle recently got remarried, so that reminded me of an incident that happened when his son was very young. Now, I used to have a very decent relationship with my uncle. He was the youngest of my dad's siblings and born almost 15 years after my dad. He was always kind of a wild child, but when he had a son, he really settled down. So during the summer, we all head over to my aunt's farm during the summer. This year, Spider-Man 3, the Tobey Maguire one, had just come out. Now, I was still pretty young, about 13 at the time. Entitled Brat was about 8, being quite a bit younger than me. Now, I was a late bloomer and just hit that wave of puberty where girls sprout up like weeds. We were talking about Spider-Man and how it was his favorite movie. I liked it too, so I tried to talk to him about it. He got upset and said girls couldn't like Spider-Man. Entitled Brat says I've probably never seen it. I just roll my eyes and describe the plot to him and he gets really mad. But for now, he simmers. Later, Entitled Brat asked me to come outside and push him on the swing, and I do. Once again, I'm much bigger than him, so I can push him pretty high. Now, it was apparently his plan to show me that he was a boy and much stronger than me, so when he offered to push me on the swing, I accepted. He wasn't strong enough to get me very far. This enraged him. I tried to explain to him because I'm so much bigger than him, I weigh a lot more, but Entitled Brat was having none of it. He runs off into my aunt's garage and comes back with a wood baseball bat. I'm so shocked the first swing hits me clean in the stomach. The second was not too lucky. I'm bigger than him and pissed because I just coughed up half the orange pop I'd been drinking before. I grab the bat, wrenching it from his hand. I tell him, "Never hit me again." And apparently I am so scary in that moment that he runs inside and gets his dad. Entitled uncle storms out and the following occurs. "What did you do to my son?" Me sputtering, He hit me." "Why is he crying?" "I didn't let him." "And why not? He was just playing." "He hit me with a bat." Not long after that, the rest of my family came down. My dad and uncle talked, and we just went about the rest of the night normally, except I was told I had to stay by my mom. During the half-hour drive back to our home, my dad was pissed and told me my uncle tried to have me not just sent home, which meant the whole family would have to leave, but he wanted me banned from family gatherings from there on. The fact my cousin admitted to everyone exactly what happened as he saw nothing wrong with his actions saved me from a lot of trouble. Naturally, I wasn't, but my uncle was always super wary of me whenever I was around from then on. Honestly, I'm waiting for one of these days when an entitled parent posts on Reddit as if they're the victim, like, "I invited my brother's family to a picnic the other day, and I gave them lunch, and in exchange, they wouldn't let my precious boy beat their daughter with a baseball bat. The nerve of these choosing beggars, they're so selfish." My fiance, who we'll call N, died very unexpectedly in 2016 at the age of 35. I was 26 at the time. We lived together in a house on a few acres. I'd lived there for a couple of years and he had lived there most of his life. N's grandfather built the house, and when his grandparents died, the house was willed to their 6 children, one of whom was N's mother. When N's mother died, her share was willed to N and his 2 siblings. So N was a partial owner of the home. His aunt, who we'll call R, also lived there. She was mentally unstable in many ways I won't get into, except to say that she was a serious hoarder. Consequently, the house was in disrepair. Honestly, it was not fit to be lived in and could have easily been condemned, but it was a rough time. Please spare your judgment if you can. N and I were in the process of getting an apartment when he died. Since N and R were the only partial owners living there, they paid all the property taxes and for repairs, etc. I contributed too after I moved in. It's not like N and I were just squatting there or something. A couple months before N died, R had some health issue that resulted in her being hospitalized and then moving into an apartment. That's when the entitled family, N's aunts, uncles, and cousins, swooped in and started demanding that we move out so they could sell the property. Okay, fine. We were planning on moving anyway. They were really unrealistic about the timeline though. At one point, they insisted that since we were low income, all we needed to do was contact the government. They weren't sure which department. And they'd just give us a small house and some land. That's how out of touch with reality these people were. They just show up in the house whenever they wanted, which I guess legally was their right, but it's also pretty rude and entitled to just come into someone's home on a regular basis without even speaking to them while you're there, much less letting them know beforehand. Anyway, when N died, they were unabashedly elated. 2 days after he died, I was at the house collecting some of my things when I got a text from his sister, who is an angel, we'll call her AS, saying that they'd messaged his out-of-state uncle's wife, asking her to message AS about me because, God forbid, anyone be direct. Apparently, they wanted me banned from the property immediately. We'd been living in sin, and now that N was gone, I had no reason or right to be there. I was devastated. At that point, I wanted to take everything he'd ever touched and scoop it up and hold it close to me forever. I couldn't bear the thought of not being able to have anything of his. As an afterthought, I realized all of my stuff was also still there. Luckily, AS stuck up for me and said I could be there as long as I wanted. She lives across the country though, so she couldn't do much to enforce it. The most egregious display of disgusting entitlement and general buttholishness happened a couple days later. I was at the house, frantically trying to load up the car with the things that made up the life that N and I shared together, which was taxing both physically and emotionally. I was crying when N's cousin, who we'll call EC, appeared in our bedroom. Her smiling like I'm an old friend and we just ran into each other at Costco. Hey, isn't this crazy? N died so suddenly. He was fine a few days ago. Me, through tears. Yeah, it was very unexpected. Her laughing, I know, well, at least we can sell this dump now. It's then that I hear people talking and laughing in the next room. Apparently, EC had brought her teenage daughter and several of her daughter's friends to gawk at the house. Our home, where we lived and loved, was being openly mocked with zero regard for my feelings. So, when do you think you'll be gone? I'm not sure. I'd like to get as much of N stuff as possible, and AS asked me to get some of their mom's things. Her frowning. Well, I guess I'll have to talk to AS about that. Their mom is the reason this place is so run down, you know. She laughs again. I don't see why AS would want any of this garbage. Note that this is blatantly false, as the house had been in pristine condition until N's mother died, and ours hoarding worsened to the point that N could not keep up with it. Also, there were plenty of keepsakes and heirlooms that were not at all garbage. I'm sort of dumbfounded by this whole exchange and way too emotionally drained to deal with it, so I just get back to what I was doing. Later that night, EC's sister messaged me asking what I'd done with R's box of plastic horses. R wanted them back immediately. Of course, I had not taken it. Why would I want a box of plastic horses? Hint, I would not. I elected not to reply. After that, they got more aggressive about me not being there because I was a plastic horse thief. N was an artist by trade, and they started just throwing away all of his drawings and taking some of the more valuable figurines he had. The last day I was there, my mom went with me. After getting the last of what I could, I just wanted to walk around the house one last time and sort of say goodbye to the place we'd spent so much time together in. A place I'd never be again. Of course, the family showed up and my mom tried to calmly explain that I would be out soon and would not return. She tried to appeal to their sense of humanity by explaining how traumatized I was from his death and how I just needed this for some semblance of closure. But his aunt got in her face and lectured her about how N was in heck and I'd be going there too. Then my mom, who somehow managed not to knock her teeth out, reminded her that AS had told me I could be there. The aunt responded by calling the police to have me forcibly removed. We left before the police arrived, and now that's my final memory of the place where the most amazing man I've ever known taught me how to love. I'm sorry it's a bit anticlimactic, but this really was cathartic for me to write. If you've read this far, I sincerely thank you. I just love how this entitled family thinks that OP is going to heck because they were living in sin. Meanwhile, oh yes, welcome to heaven. I see that when you were alive, you were a terrible human being who treated grieving widows like garbage. Please come right in. You definitely belong in heaven. That was rSlash Entitledparents, and I'm curious, if an entitled parent came up to you and demanded that you show your privates to their kid, what would you do?